If the pact breaks tonight, no one will survive what wakes beneath this forest. Clara Bennett never believed in monsters, only in data, measurable patterns, and the quiet certainty of science. Yet as she stood 3 miles past the last warning sign at the edge of Black Hollow Forest, she felt something older than logic watching her from between the trees. The moon hung low and swollen in the sky, tinted faintly red by a coming lunar eclipse predicted at 2:17 a.m., and the air carried a strange stillness, the kind that settles before a summer storm rolls across the Midwest plains. 30 years ago, after a war no history book fully recorded, humans and wolves had sworn a silent pact never to cross each other's land. And though most people dismissed the story as folklore, Clara knew better. Her father had vanished out here when she was 12, leaving behind journals filled with coordinates, energy readings, and one repeated phrase circled in ink: the core. She had spent a decade earning her doctorate in biophysics, chasing grants, publishing papers, telling herself she was driven by curiosity, not grief. But when her team's satellite scan revealed a geothermal anomaly pulsing beneath these protected acres, the numbers aligned too perfectly with her father's last entry to ignore. She should have waited for federal permits, for backup, for sunrise. Yet the signal spiked tonight, as if something underground had stirred, and every instinct told her that if she didn't see it with her own eyes, someone else would. A portable sensor pack pressed against her spine. Clara stepped over a fallen log and followed the faint glow flickering through the trees ahead, a soft silver light seeping from the earth itself like moonlight caught in stone. When she reached the clearing, she stopped cold. At the center lay a ring of ancient markers half buried in moss, carved with symbols no modern surveyor would recognize, and in the middle of them the ground shimmered, a low hum vibrating through the soles of her boots, rising up her bones like the echo of distant thunder. She knelt, gloved fingers hovering inches above the surface, and the air changed, charged and electric, as if the forest had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a presence shifted. Cale Thorne, alpha king of the northern pack, felt the tremor from nearly a mile away, a ripple in the invisible boundary his kind had guarded for 3 decades, and his eyes lifted toward the blood-tinged moon with a quiet dread he had not known since boyhood. He had fought for peace, endured suspicion because of the human blood in his veins, held his council together with restraint instead of force. Yet the energy awakening beneath Black Hollow was not something treaties could contain. Back in the clearing, Clara's scanner flashed readings far beyond geothermal activity, numbers that defied every model she had ever trusted. And as the glow brightened beneath her hand, a gust of wind spiraled through the clearing though no storm was forecast, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and frost. She rose slowly, heart pounding, aware now that she was not alone. At the edge of the trees, tall and motionless as carved stone, stood a figure watching her, silver eyes reflecting the eclipse like polished metal, and in that suspended second before either of them spoke, the silent pact that had held 2 worlds apart for 30 years began to fracture. The forest did not move, yet everything felt altered, as if the night itself had tilted on its axis. Clara forced herself to breathe slowly, counting the rhythm the way she did before presenting at conferences, grounding herself in logic instead of fear. The man at the edge of the clearing did not step forward, but he did not retreat either. He stood tall, broad-shouldered beneath a dark coat that blended with the trees, his posture controlled, deliberate, as though every motion cost him restraint. When he finally spoke, his voice carried across the 20 yards between them without effort. "You are standing on protected land." His tone was not raised, yet it held an authority that made the clearing feel smaller. Clara swallowed and lifted her chin. "This is federal forest. My team has a right to conduct environmental research." Even as she said it, the words felt thin. The energy beneath her boots pulsed again, stronger now, and the glow brightened in response to her proximity. The man's silver gaze shifted briefly to the ground at her feet, and something flickered in his expression, not anger, not surprise, but recognition. "You triggered it," he said quietly. Clara glanced down at her scanner, which continued to flash readings that defied every known geothermal model. "I did not trigger anything," she replied. "I am measuring an anomaly. That is what scientists do." He took one step forward, just one, and the air between them tightened. Your measurements woke something that was meant to remain undisturbed. The words settled heavily in her chest. Meant by who? She asked. By us, he answered, and for the first time she noticed the subtle shift in his eyes, a faint reflective sheen under the eclipse light, not entirely human. The stories her father had once whispered when she was a child rose unbidden in her memory, tales of wolves who guarded the border after a war that never officially happened. 30 years ago, there was an agreement, the man continued. Humans would not cross into this territory. We would not cross into yours. Peace requires distance. Clara's pulse quickened. That was folklore. He held her gaze. It was survival. A low vibration rolled through the clearing, stronger now, and the ring of ancient markers emitted a soft resonance that seemed to respond to both of them. The eclipse deepened overhead, the moon nearly swallowed by shadow. Clara felt it then, not just heat or light, but a current threading through the air, brushing against her skin like static. Her father had written about this, about a source beneath the earth capable of sustaining or destroying, depending on who controlled it. She took a cautious step back from the center. What is it? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man hesitated, and for a fraction of a second, the weight of leadership showed in his eyes. It is called the core, he said. It does not belong to your government. It does not belong to corporations. It belongs to this land, and to those who swore to protect it. Clara's breath caught. My father studied something called the core before he disappeared. At that, something changed in his expression, a shadow of understanding crossing his features. What was his name? He asked. Daniel Bennett, she replied. The silence that followed felt heavier than the night air. The man's jaw tightened, not with hostility, but with memory. Then you have stepped into a truth your father chose not to expose, he said softly. And now that it is awake, neither of our worlds will ignore it for long. The name lingered between them like a door half opened to. A room neither of them had entered in years. Daniel Bennett, the man repeated under his breath, as though testing the weight of it against memory. Clara watched him carefully now, noticing the subtle tension in his shoulders, the way his attention sharpened not with threat, but with calculation. You knew him, she said, the realization rising slowly and then all at once. The glow beneath the earth pulsed again, brighter than before, and a thin beam of silver light threaded upward through the center of the clearing, dissolving into the dark sky. The man's gaze flicked toward it, and for the first time his composure shifted into urgency. We need to move, he said. That signal will not go unnoticed. By who? Clara demanded, though she already sensed the answer would not fit neatly into any scientific framework she trusted. By my council, he replied, and by yours. If your team has monitoring equipment within 5 miles of this forest, they will see what you have done. Clara's mind raced. The main research camp was stationed just under 4 miles south, equipped with satellite uplinks and seismic monitors. If the spike registered there, her colleagues would alert the funding board, and within hours federal agencies would request access. This was supposed to be a preliminary survey, she said, more to herself than to him. I did not authorize extraction. It will not matter, he answered. Curiosity rarely waits for permission. The eclipse reached its peak, casting the clearing in a muted crimson glow that blurred the line between shadow and light. Clara felt the hum intensify, resonating with something in her chest she could not explain. You said my father chose not to expose this, she pressed. What does that mean? The man hesitated, then stepped closer, stopping just beyond arm's reach. He stood nearly a foot taller than her, yet there was no intimidation in his stance, only a quiet gravity that came from carrying responsibility too long. Your father found the core 12 years ago, he said. He understood what it was capable of. Sustainable energy without fossil fuel dependency, without grid collapse, without political leverage. Clara's breath caught. That is impossible. Nothing is without leverage, he replied. The core does not respond to machinery. It responds to lineage, to balance, to intent. That is why it has remained dormant. Clara stared at him, the implications unraveling. Inside her, are you saying it is alive? He did not smile. I am saying it chooses when to awaken. A distant echo rolled through the forest, not thunder, not wind, but something deeper, like a call carried over miles. The man's eyes shifted toward the sound, and Clara sensed the weight of unseen forces gathering beyond the trees. What is your name? She asked quietly. He held her gaze for a long moment before answering. Kale Thorn. The acknowledgement carried more than identity. It carried authority. I am the Alpha King of this territory. The words settled into the night with steady certainty, and though Clara had never believed in kings or ancient hierarchies, she recognized leadership when she saw it. If you are king, she said carefully, then why does it sound like you are not the one in control? A flicker of something crossed his expression, not anger, not shame, but conflict. Because peace is fragile, he replied, and tonight you have given those who want it broken a reason to act. The words lingered in the charged air long after he spoke them, and Clara felt the weight of what she had done settle into her bones. The forest was no longer quiet, it was listening. From somewhere beyond the clearing, she sensed movement, not chaotic or wild, but organized, purposeful, as if unseen eyes had turned toward the disturbance at the heart of their territory. You think your own people will use this against you, she said, studying Kale's expression beneath the dim red light of the eclipse. He did not deny it. There are those who believe peace with humans was a mistake, he answered evenly. They have waited years for proof that your kind cannot be trusted with our borders. Clara felt a flicker of frustration. I crossed a tree line with a scanner, not an army. Intent does not matter to those who seek advantage, he replied. The core awakening tonight will be interpreted as invasion. Another pulse of energy rippled through the ground, softer this time, but spreading outward like a wave through still water. Clara glanced toward the path she had taken into the clearing, calculating the distance back to her vehicle parked roughly 2 miles away along the service road. My team will notice the spike within minutes, she said quietly. They will come looking for me. Then we do not have minutes, Kale replied. His gaze shifted to the tree line again, and though he remained composed, Clara sensed the strain beneath it, the tension of a leader balancing on the edge of competing loyalties. Why did my father stay silent? She asked, needing something solid to anchor herself to. Kale's eyes returned to hers. Because he understood that once humans saw the core as a resource, they would never stop trying to control it. He came to me, he continued after a beat. He wanted to study it, to understand it, but he also wanted to protect it. Clara's breath caught. You met him here? Yes, Kale said. More than once. He believed knowledge could prevent conflict. Clara felt a sharp ache at the thought of her father standing in this very clearing, speaking with the Alpha King in secret while she waited at home for answers that never came. What happened to him? She pressed. Kale's jaw tightened, not in anger but in restraint. He left this forest alive the last time I saw him. What occurred afterward did not happen on my land. The distinction was deliberate. Clara read between the lines. Someone else wanted the core. Someone who did not believe in silence. A distant howl rose through the trees, long and low, echoing across the miles of dark forest. It was not a call of aggression, but of signal, a warning passed from one unseen sentinel to another. Kale's posture shifted subtly at the sound. They are already gathering, he said. Clara felt the gravity of the moment press down on her. If your council believes this is an invasion, what happens next? Kale held her gaze steadily. That depends on whether we choose fear or reason. The eclipse began to ease, a thin crescent of silver light reappearing along the moon's edge, and in that fragile transition between shadow and light, Clara understood something with startling clarity. This was no longer just about research or grief. It was about two worlds standing at the edge of another war, and she was the variable neither side had planned for. The crescent of returning moonlight stretched wider across the sky, and with it came a subtle shift in the forest, as if the land itself had chosen to exhale. Clara tightened her grip on the scanner, watching the reading stabilize but not fade. The core was still active, only quieter now, like a heartbeat settling after a sprint. If reason is an option, she said carefully, then we use it. My team will assume this is a breakthrough in renewable energy. They are not looking for a fight. Kale regarded her with a measured expression. Intentions can change once funding and power enter the equation. You know that. She did, and the acknowledgement tasted bitter. Grants turned into contracts, contracts into control. She had seen corporations swallow discoveries before, reshaping them into leverage. A faint rustle swept through the trees to their left, and Clara caught a glimpse of movement, silhouettes keeping distance, but not leaving. Your council is already here, she murmured. They do not trust what they cannot see, Kale replied. and they do not trust what they believe I am." The words carried more weight than he intended to show. Clara studied him more closely now, noticing the subtle tension in his stance, the way he positioned himself between her and the deeper forest without making it obvious. "You are not entirely wolf," she said softly, piecing together what he had implied before. His gaze did not waver. "My mother was human." The admission settled into the clearing like another tremor. "That must complicate things," she said. "It makes leadership a negotiation," he answered. "There are those who believe strength is proven through separation. They would rather see walls rebuilt than bridges considered." Clara glanced back at the glowing center of the clearing. "And the core threatens that balance." "Yes," Kale said. "Because if humans learn it responds to lineage and intent, they will search for ways to manipulate both." Another howl echoed through the forest, closer this time, layered with others that answered in sequence, forming a pattern Clara could not decipher but instinctively recognized as coordination. "How long do we have before this turns into something neither of us can contain?" she asked. Kale's jaw tightened slightly. "Hours, perhaps less. Your team will move toward the signal. My council will move toward you. If they meet without preparation, fear will decide for us." Clara considered the map in her mind. "There is an old ranger station about a mile west of here," she said. "It has a shortwave radio tower. If I can reach my team first, I can delay them, tell them the readings were a malfunction." Kale studied her as though weighing more than her words. "And what would you tell them tomorrow?" "The truth," she answered after a pause, though even she heard the uncertainty in it. "That depends on whether we can find one that does not start another war." The moonlight strengthened, casting silver along the edges of Kale's features, sharpening the resolve in his eyes. "Then we move now," he said. "You will not walk alone through this forest tonight." Clara hesitated only a fraction of a second before nodding. Somewhere behind them, unseen watchers shifted position, and as Clara took her first step away from the core, she felt the undeniable pull of something larger than science drawing her deeper into a conflict that had been waiting for her long before she ever crossed the tree line. The forest closed around them as they moved west, the path barely visible beneath layers of fallen leaves and pine needles. Clara kept pace beside Kale, aware of how effortlessly he navigated terrain that forced her to watch every step. He did not rush her, but he did not slow either, his stride measured as though he was calculating more than distance. "The ranger station is about a mile from here," she said quietly, adjusting the strap of her equipment pack. "There is an emergency generator and a shortwave tower. If the line still works, I can reach my team before they mobilize." Kale nodded once, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. "You must convince them the signal was contained," he said. "If they believe the anomaly is expanding, they will escalate." Clara exhaled slowly. "I can tell them the readings were distorted by the eclipse. Solar interference can create false spikes in satellite data. It would buy time." "Time is what we need," he replied. A faint crackle of branches sounded off to their right, followed by another further back, a pattern too deliberate to be coincidence. Clara glanced sideways. "They are tracking us. They are ensuring we do not change direction," Kale corrected calmly. "It is a show of presence, not threat." That distinction mattered, she realized. "Your council does not trust me. They do not trust humans," he said. "You are simply the closest example." The honesty was steady, not cruel. Clara considered the weight he carried, standing between factions that saw weakness and compromise. "Why did you tell them about my father?" she asked. Kale did not look at her immediately. "Because secrets rot alliances from the inside," he answered. "If they learn I withheld information about a human who knew of the core, they will question my loyalty." Clara absorbed that. "You are trying to protect both sides." "I am trying to prevent history from repeating itself," he said. The trees thinned slightly, revealing the faint outline of the ranger station roof through the branches, a dark silhouette against the silvered sky. The structure sat in a shallow clearing, weathered wood and rusted railings, abandoned for nearly a decade after federal funding cuts rerouted patrol routes further south. Clara felt a surge of cautious relief. "That is it," she whispered. Kale slowed before stepping into the open space, eyes sweeping the perimeter. The presence in the forest remained, distant but attentive. He turned to her. "You will speak to your team. I will remain outside. If your colleagues approach this location tonight, they will not find me welcoming." Clara understood the boundary in his words. "Fair enough," she said. She climbed the short wooden steps to the station door, the boards creaking under her boots. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and old varnish. She moved quickly to the corner where the radio unit was mounted, fingers tracing familiar controls as she powered up the backup generator. It coughed to life, humming low and steady. Outside, Cale stood at the edge of the clearing, posture unwavering, gaze fixed on the forest as distant howls echoed again, softer now but layered with urgency. Clara adjusted the frequency dial, heart pounding as static crackled through the speaker. If her team answered, she would have one chance to shape what happened next. And beyond the walls of the aging station, under a sky no longer eclipsed but still tense with promise, the fragile line between two worlds waited to see which story she would tell. Static cracked through the radio before a familiar voice cut in, sharp with concern. "Clara, we are reading a spike off your last coordinates. What did you find out there?" Clara closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath as she pressed the transmit button. "It is a calibration error amplified by the lunar eclipse," she said, keeping her tone calm and precise. "The geothermal anomaly is stable. I recommend delaying any physical approach until morning light so we can reassess with full spectrum data." There was a pause on the line, followed by the low murmur of her team conferring in the background. "You are certain?" the voice asked. "The board is already asking questions." Clara glanced toward the doorway where moonlight outlined Cale's still figure outside. "I am certain the readings are incomplete without further analysis," she replied. "If we move heavy equipment into protected forest at night, we risk contaminating the data set. Give me until sunrise." Another stretch of silence, longer this time, before the answer came. "All right. We will hold position until 0600 hours. Stay safe out there." The line clicked off, leaving only the hum of the generator and Clara's heartbeat in her ears. She exhaled slowly, the weight of the temporary reprieve settling over her shoulders. Sunrise. They had bought perhaps 6 hours. She stepped back outside, the cool air brushing her face. Cale turned slightly at her approach, silver eyes searching hers for an unspoken verdict. "They will wait until 6 in the morning," she said. "It is not permanent, but it is time." Cale nodded once. Time is leverage. The forest beyond the clearing shifted again, but the howls had quieted, replaced by a tense stillness. "They know something changed," Clara said. "Yes," he replied. "They are deciding how to respond." Clara folded her arms against the chill, studying him in the softened moonlight. "When they gather, what will they demand?" "An explanation," he answered, "and proof that I remain loyal to my kind." Clara held his gaze. "And how do you prove that?" His expression hardened slightly, not in threat, but in resignation. "By demonstrating control over what threatens our territory." The implication hung between them. Clara felt a flicker of unease. "You mean me?" "You are part of the equation," he said carefully, "but not the threat itself. The core is what unsettles them. The idea that humans might reach it unsettles them more." A breeze swept across the clearing, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Clara thought of her father standing here years ago, choosing silence over acclaim, restraint over recognition. "If the core responds to lineage and intent," she said slowly, "then perhaps it awakened because it sensed more than intrusion." Cale studied her with renewed focus. "Explain." "My father carried knowledge of it without exploiting it," she said. "You carry both human and wolf blood. I carry his research and his intent. Maybe the core did not wake because I crossed a boundary. Maybe it woke because the balance shifted." Cale considered this, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Balance requires both sides to acknowledge each other," he said. Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then maybe the question is not how to put it back to sleep. Maybe the question is whether it was ever meant to stay dormant." Beyond the clearing, unseen eyes watched as the Alpha King and the human scientist stood beneath the clearing sky, the first fragile alliance between them forming not from fear, but from the possibility that the old pact was never the final answer. The night deepened into a tense stillness that felt less like silence and more like anticipation. Clara remained standing a few feet from Cale at the edge of the ranger station clearing, the generator's hum fading into the background as the forest reclaimed its dominance over sound. Somewhere beyond the tree line, movement shifted in quiet coordination, not chaotic but deliberate, and Clara sensed that whatever decision Cale's council was reaching, it would not be made in ignorance. You should go back to the core, she said softly. If they gather there without you, the narrative will form without your voice. Kale's gaze remained fixed on the darkness between the trees. They are already moving in that direction, he replied. The question is whether they arrive expecting to listen or to judge. Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice despite the distance of the unseen watchers. Then you cannot let them see uncertainty. Kale turned his head slightly, studying her with a look that carried both scrutiny and reluctant admiration. You speak as though you understand Pact politics. I understand power structures, she answered. Human ones are not so different. If they believe you are divided in your loyalties, they will push you into proving allegiance in the most dramatic way possible. A faint shape emerged from the forest's edge, then another, silhouettes holding at the boundary of moonlight without stepping fully into view. They did not approach the ranger station, but their presence was unmistakable. Clara felt the air grow heavier, charged not with threat, but with expectation. They are waiting for you to lead, she said quietly. Kale's jaw tightened, not in fear, but in resolve. Leadership is not always about moving forward, he said. Sometimes it is about holding ground. Clara glanced toward the direction of the core, roughly a mile east through dense forest and uneven terrain. The energy spike had subsided but not vanished. She could still feel a faint resonance in her chest, like a distant hum that refused to fade. If the core awakened because of balance, she said, then suppressing it might cause more instability. Kale considered her words carefully. You are suggesting we allow it to remain active. I am suggesting that burying it again may not restore what was lost 30 years ago, she replied. The old pact was built on separation. Maybe that was never sustainable. A low murmur passed through the unseen figures beyond the clearing, a sound too controlled to be random. Kale straightened slightly, shoulders aligning with quiet authority. They sense the shift as well, he said. Not all of them seek destruction. Some seek certainty. Clara met his eyes. Then give them a new certainty. Not one built on fear of humans, but on controlled cooperation. The idea lingered between them, radical and fragile. If I bring you before the council, Kale said slowly, they will question your presence, your motives, your father's involvement. I will answer them, Clara said without hesitation. Kale searched her face as though weighing more than courage, measuring intent. You would stand before those who believe you represent invasion? I would stand because hiding validates their suspicion, she replied. The forest stilled again, and in that suspended moment beneath a sky clearing of shadow, Kale made a decision that would ripple beyond the night. At first light, he said, you will come with me to the council grounds. If peace is to survive, it will not be because we avoided confrontation. It will be because we faced it together. And as the distant watchers shifted, neither retreating nor advancing, the fragile line between two worlds began to reshape itself around a choice neither side had anticipated. The hours before dawn stretched thin and restless, the forest holding its breath as if aware that sunrise would not simply bring light, but consequence. Clara remained awake on the wooden steps of the ranger station, watching the horizon soften from black to deep blue, while Kale stood several yards away, still and composed, his attention fixed on the eastern treeline where the council grounds lay. Beyond a narrow ridge, neither of them spoke for a long while. The temporary silence she had negotiated with her team felt fragile, like glass balanced on the edge of a table. At exactly 5:43 in the morning, a faint glow touched the tops of the trees, and with it came movement from the forest. Figures emerged gradually from the shadows, stepping into view with controlled precision, not threatening, but unmistakably united. They formed a wide semicircle at the edge of the clearing, giving Kale space, yet watching him with intense expectation. Clara felt the weight of their collective gaze and rose slowly to stand beside him. The difference in height between them did not diminish the steadiness in her posture. They came sooner than expected, she murmured. They were always here, Kale replied quietly. Now they are visible. As the first streaks of gold filtered through the branches, an older man stepped forward from the group, his expression stern but measured. His eyes flicked briefly toward Clara before settling on Kale. The core awakened under your watch, he said evenly. And a human stands within our borders. Kale did not flinch. The core awakened because balance shifted, he answered. Not because of invasion. A low murmur passed through the gathered wolves. Clara felt the instinct to step back, Yet she held her ground. "My name is Clara Bennett," she said clearly, her voice steady in the cool morning air. "My father studied the core and chose to protect it. I stand here for the same reason." Several eyes narrowed, suspicion obvious but restrained. The older man's gaze sharpened. "Protection from whom?" "From those who would exploit it without understanding its nature," she replied. "Human or wolf?" The clearing fell quiet at that. Cale glanced at her briefly, not in surprise, but in acknowledgement. "The core does not respond to force," he said. "It responds to intent. If we attempt to bury it again through fear, we will fracture what little trust remains between our worlds." The older man studied him carefully. "And if humans return with machinery at sunrise?" Clara met his gaze directly. "They will not," she said. "I delayed them until 6 in the morning. I can delay them again if we establish a cooperative study that ensures transparency rather than secrecy." The proposal lingered in the early light, radical yet grounded in practicality. The council members exchanged glances, uncertainty shifting toward consideration. Cale stepped forward half a pace, authority steady but not aggressive. 30 years ago, we chose distance. Today we choose whether distance remains our only strategy. The sun broke fully over the ridge, casting clear light across the clearing, dissolving the last shadows of the eclipse. In that moment, Clara understood that the old pact had not shattered overnight. It had simply reached its limit. And as the Alpha King stood beside a human scientist at the boundary of two worlds, the future did not look like surrender or domination. It looked like a decision still in motion, fragile, deliberate, and shared.